Hi, my name is Karen Knight, and I'm the Vegan Amateur. Today I'm going to be making something that I usually do once a week, and it is kind of like an end of the week, don't waste any vegetables kind of meal. So I don't know about you guys, but usually at the end of the week I've got kind of like a half of an onion hanging around. There's one bell pepper, maybe a half a head of broccoli, maybe 2 carrots or something left over. So what I like to do is kind of make a pasta sauce with all of those good vegetables, making sure I'm not wasting them, and also making sure I get a nutritious meal out of it, or me and Andy get a nutritious meal out of it. So I'm going to show you how I do that. First thing I'm going to do is take you through my list of ingredients. And again, it is literally stuff that is kind of left over from the week, so this stuff can vary from week to week, but generally there is at least 1 onion involved. So I actually had 2 halves. Somehow there were like 2 halves of onions kind of like left over hanging out in the refrigerator. So I've just cut that into quarters. I've got a bell pepper here, roughly chopped into about 8 pieces there. I've got a couple of cloves of garlic. Obviously, you can use a bit more garlic if you are a garlic lover and don't have somebody who doesn't really like it. Although the way that I'm using it in this recipe is probably a little bit easier on people who have an aversion to garlic. I had some sort of cherry tomatoes left over, salad tomatoes, so I had about maybe like 8 or 9 of them, and I just cut those in half. I've got some mushrooms, and what I've done with those, that's about 125 grams of mushrooms, and what I've done with those, again, just use what we have. I'm going to use this as kind of a, I don't want to say meat replacement, but something to make the sauce have a little bit more texture and a little bit more of that kind of minced meat kind of flavor going on as well. So 125 grams of, this was, I don't know if they're chestnut mushrooms, I can't remember, chestnut mushrooms or button mushrooms. And what I've done is I've put those through the food processor with the grating attachment. I had about a half a head of cauliflower left, so that's going in. Again, just roughly kind of chopped up. It doesn't have to be in, small florets, so nothing too fancy going on there. It's all kind of going to get blended up in the end anyway. I've got 500 milliliters of vegetable stock. I've got some mixed herbs. This includes marjoram, thyme, oregano, basil, just things that you would normally find in, your bog standard kind of pasta sauce. I have also got nutritional yeast, add a little bit of a cheesy, nutty flavor to everything. I've got some olive oil. I have, and olive oil wise, I'm probably gonna use, I should probably give you some measurements here. So with the mixed herbs, I'll probably use about 2 teaspoons, maybe 1 to 1.5 tablespoons of the mixed herbs. I'll probably use altogether around 3 or 4 tablespoons of the nutritional yeast. Olive oil, I'll probably use about 2 tablespoons of olive oil in the recipe. I have also got some plant-based sausage, tofurkey sausage, sliced up and kind of browned off for this recipe. If you don't have, sort of vegan sausage or anything like that to add, it's not a problem. You can just leave it out. Actually, it's kind of like just something I actually happen to have, and it's good in this recipe, so I thought I'd throw it in. Salt, salt, pepper to taste, and some pasta of some sort. I'm using whole wheat spaghetti, and we tend to use whole wheat pasta because whole grains, it's just a little bit better for you, it makes the meal healthier, and it actually tastes really good. So I think that's everything ingredient wise. It seems like a lot, But what you probably shouldn't need to do for this recipe is go out and buy a bunch of ingredients. This should be stuff that you kind of just have. So if you have broccoli and not cauliflower, if you have carrots in there, if you have, I don't know, some green beans, or if you have more onions, or if you have whole tomatoes, it should be really stuff that you're just kind of finding at the end of the week in the refrigerator that might be wasted. It's really good to chuck in there. I think I want to say I've done it with squash before as well. Anyway, that's the ingredients, and we'll get started with our roasted vegetables. Okay, so like I said, we're going to start with all of those vegetables. So what I'm going to do is split them between two sort of roasting trays. So I've got my cauliflower. I'm gonna roughly put half in one and half in the other. Same goes for the bell pepper and my onion. Now my cloves of garlic that I've got here, I'm keeping them inside of their, I don't know what you call it, their husk? I think that's what you would call it. Keeping those inside of their husks. And I'm just gonna throw those into the tray as they are. Now, what I was saying earlier about garlic and people who sort of have an aversion to garlic, roasting garlic can be actually a really great way of introducing garlic into any of your dishes. Maybe not any of them, some of them call for it cooked in different ways, but certainly a pasta dish or a sort of Italian style dish. Roasted garlic is a little bit more mild in flavor. It kind of almost has a sweet flavor. I could eat like roasted cloves of garlic just on their own. It doesn't need to be blended into anything. It's just such a really nice flavor, nice mellow flavor. Right, I've got my tomatoes, throwing those in here too. Again, just roughly splitting these in between. So the next thing that I'm going to do is add that olive oil. So like I said, it's about 2 tablespoons of olive oil, about a tablespoon on each tray. And then I'm going to add a little bit of nutritional yeast. I think I told you I'm going to be using 2 to 3, maybe even 4 tablespoons in this recipe. So I'm going to actually put a tablespoon over each, sprinkle that right over roughly. Nutritional yeast, a little bit of salt and pepper to taste, so that's really down to you. I'm probably using about a teaspoon of salt altogether there. And pepper wise, we like pepper in this house, so that's quite a bit of pepper, probably about a teaspoon on each. Right, so now time to get your clean hands dirty. So obviously wash your hands ahead of time. But what I'm going to do is just go in and just kind of make sure all of that is coating all of the stuff we added on is kind of coating the vegetables. It doesn't have to be pretty, and this definitely isn't really that pretty, but I'll show you what that looks like. There we go. Everything pretty much got a good coating there. Now, what I'm going to do now is pop that into my oven, which I should have told you I preheated to 180 degrees. If you have it preheated, it's not a big deal. You obviously just need to give yourself a little bit of a longer roasting time. So it's quite high heat. I've got a fan-assisted oven as well, so if you don't have a fan-assisted oven, probably about 200 degrees. I don't know what gas mark that is. You should look it up. I'm gonna say 5 or 6. I don't know. I've never had one of those kinds of ovens. So, going into my oven with my trays. So those are gonna go in there for about 15 minutes. I'll come back and check, but the outside of them should be a tiny bit charred, not completely burned, obviously, but these are roasted vegetables, so they should look roasted. You don't want them to be just soft and mushy. You do want a little bit of that char on the outside of them. So we'll come back and check on those in about 15 minutes. This is probably the point at which you could do something like run those mushrooms through your food processor on the grating attachment. The other thing that you could do at this point is slice up your sausages, if that's what you're using, and brown those off. If you're using something like a faux meat, like a corn mince meat, or just a sort of fake mince meat to make it more like a ragu, now would be a good time to put that in the pan and sort of brown that off as well, just while your vegetables are roasting. I don't have any of that stuff to do at the moment because I pre-prepared for this. Also got a stain on my shirt there. Yeah, that's it for now. Be back in 15 minutes. Okay, so that 15 minutes is up, and I've taken my vegetables out of the oven, and I'll give you a look at what they look like. I've just kind of scooted them all into one pan, but hopefully you can see quite well what they look like. So they've got just a little bit of char on them, and honestly, I would say this is the least amount of char that you actually want. So if they don't look sort of brownish, blackish around the edges, give them another 5 minutes in the oven. I could have given this another 5 minutes. It wouldn't have been bad at all if they'd gone a little bit browner, but this is the sort of minimum amount of browning that you want on your roasted vegetables. Right, so the next thing I am going to do is I'm going to fish out those couple of garlic cloves that I had roasting in there. I'm just going to set those to the side for now because what I'm going to do is I'm going to be blending up my vegetable mixture, my roasted vegetables, and I want to take the garlic out of the husk before I add that into the mixture. Don't want husk in your mixture, so I'm just going to get my food processor. I'm using the, it's still got some mushrooms in it. It's not just a filthy food processor, but I'm using my blending attachment here. I'm in a new kitchen. I don't know if you noticed, but funnily enough, it's like the more space I have, the sort of more difficult it feels to arrange myself at the moment, at least for videoing. Oh, another thing that I have going back here is a pot of hot water. I've got it set to boil, so it's not something that I have to actually wait for later. So I have actually, I started out with a little bit of water in the bottom of the pan. I put that on the highest heat. I also just boiled the kettle, and I've dumped my boiled kettle in there. So hopefully that will be a boiling pot of water fairly soon. But that's just so later on I don't have to wait for it when I want when I want to get my pasta going. Right, so as you can see, I am kind of sloppily putting my vegetables into food processor. Just gonna give you a look at that. So things are kind of blending up. It's still a little bit chunky. At this point, I'm going to put some of my veg stock into it. Not all at once, just because I am a little bit worried about the mixture or the sauce being a little bit too runny. So I'm just going to do a little bit at a time and sort of gauge how much I want. I do have 500 ml ready. I'm not sure if I'll use all of that. We'll see. Still, just see. So there's lots of new noises for Bernie to bark at. full disclosure, what I normally would do is not use made up veg stock. I might use a veg stock pot or a veg stock cube, and use passata as my liquid to kind of, sort of loosen up the sauce mixture. But funnily enough, for once, I didn't have any passata. Here's what that looks like. Pale orange color, probably not the most appetizing color. Right, so I've got that on this in a pan on the stovetop now. I'm gonna start heating that up. But what I'm also going to do is add some of my herbs and other bits and pieces. So I think I said probably, I can't remember what I said earlier. I want to say I said 2 teaspoons to a tablespoon and a half of mixed herbs. I might have said something different. This is another thing that's to taste. I put loads in for the flavor factor. Oh, I just realized, and I'm gonna need to kind of think on my feet here. I forgot about my silly garlic. So what I'm going to do is basically take a big ladle full of, there's a lot of barking in the background. Bernie, please be quiet. Shush. Shush. He wags his tail at me. Shush. He's just gonna bark in another second. It's kind of that time of day when I think people are coming home, so you can hear people in the hallway. So he's gonna be grumbling in the background. Sorry about that. Right, so I've just put a little bit of the sauce back in so that I can get this lovely roasted garlic in there, incorporated in there. Right, so I've peeled the roasted garlic and throwing that in. Almost missed out on the roasted garlic goodness that I was like going on and on about earlier. Can you imagine? Right, now I'm just blending in. Well, I'm going to turn this down because it's starting to bubble already. Eee! Mess. Right. So I've got my mixed herbs in there. Actually, it's kind of pretty with the orange, like orangey color and green now. Thank goodness, because it was starting to look not so amazing a minute ago. Oh yikes! Appetizing wise, it wasn't looking that great. Where's my spoon? Here we go. Right. So I'm gonna do another couple of tablespoons of my favorite nutritional yeast, adding a little bit of cheesy flavor to it. And I'm going to have a little taste of it as well and see if I need to have a little bit more salt, a little bit more pepper, all to taste obviously. If there are some other herbs and spices that you guys are partial to, go for it. Like you might want to put a little bit of chili. Please, be quiet. Shush. Right, what was I saying? Oh yeah. Chili would be nice in here if you like a little bit of a kick. I'm gonna leave that out this time. What I am going to do is, oh wait, I said I was gonna taste and salt and whatnot, didn't I? Oh, maybe before I taste, it's bubbly. Maybe before I taste, I'm going to add those grated mushrooms or food processed mushrooms, whatever you wanna call it. So that's going in. Mix that in. I'm gonna turn the heat down as well. So I've got this, I started out on a high heat just to get it to bubble a little bit, which it has done spectacularly. I'm gonna put this down to kind of a medium low. I was going to taste, wasn't I? I don't wanna use that to taste. Here we go. Let's see. I'll tell you what I'm gonna add. Remember, there was salt on the roasted vegetables originally. There's salt in the veg stock, so you don't want to get too salty. And I'm not going to actually add any salt to that. I'm going to add a little bit of pepper. So he likes pepper. But that's just me. Might not be you. And what I am also going to do is add my tofurkey sausages. So as you can see, I've sliced them and browned those off in the skillet. So those are gonna go in. Actually, this looks okay, right? I'm gonna bring it over a little bit closer. I need to get my camera, my 2-camera action going again at some point, but just so you can kind of see what it looks like. Here we go. Almost looks like a little bit of a blended veggie soup. Okay, I'm gonna cover this over, let that sort of simmer a little while. My water is bubbling, so I'm gonna get my my pasta in. If you wanted to, and if you had stretched this recipe out with some passata, and you're, you know, if you're like me and you're just just a couple, like me and Andy, then I mean, this is loads. This will do you for a couple of meals. It's probably something that you could freeze for, you know, another knock-up meal, you know, later on in the month or something along those lines, just to make life easier for yourself. Family of 4 or 3 or 4, you might not get so much out of it, but again, stretch it out with some passata, add some more seasoning in. Very sort of economical. This is one of those meals that's just like, it's just easy to kind of batch cook, great for leftovers. Okay, I've got my pasta. Right, so I'm using half of a 500 gram packet of spaghetti. It's 250 grams. I'm gonna put a little extra in. So maybe I'm up to like 300 now. Okay, so water's bubbling. I'm gonna keep a close eye on this. I'm gonna look at the packet instructions. That's not something I ever really do. I tend to just have a little taste of the pasta to see that it's al dente. This is saying that this is gonna take 8 to 10 minutes, so it's gonna be a little while. I'm actually gonna turn my pasta sauce down to actual low, not just medium low, just low, and let that simmer away. Okay, so I'm gonna do a little bit of tidying up while the pasta is cooking, and when that's done, I'll come back. Okay, so pasta is done. It is al dente, so I've turned that off. I am just about to drain it. I just wanted to show you a little bit of a trick. I'm going to save some of the pasta water to potentially loosen up the sauce if it's needed. I don't usually need to do this, but because I'm paranoid about needing this little trick, I usually do it. So what I do is get a mug, put the colander on top of the mug, and put that in the sink and sort of drain it that way. And that way I've reserved a little bit of the pasta water to loosen up my sauce if I really need to. I learned that from, I'm sure it's like Jamie Oliver or like Gordon Ramsay or somebody like that has mentioned it in the past, and that's where I learned it from. I'm gonna drain pasta, put the pasta back in the pot. There is my lovely brown pasta. It is al dente, it's not overcooked. I'm gonna uncover this. First I'll give it a little bit of a stir. So what I'm gonna do now is just ladle some of this onto my pasta. I'll move that over here actually. Get far away from the heat. I'm going to get my tongs out, and I'm just going to get everything mixed together, and then I'm gonna get my bowl and serve myself some dinner. This has made loads, by the way. I'll give you a look. See if we can look into the pot there. So much. Right, so I'm going to do, you can serve this however you want. You don't have to mix everything together. And, you know, especially if you plan on freezing some of it, you might want to just portion out the pasta and then, you know, put the sauce on top, but this is the way I tend to do it. What I was gonna say is you can put a little bit more, if you want, you can sprinkle a little bit more nutritional yeast on the top of that. Like I said, it's a very homely kind of bowl of food, homely meal, something hopefully is pretty easy to make. A couple of stages to it, you know, there's the roasting, there's a little bit of blending, but it's so great for making sure you don't waste your vegetables from the week. And, you know, who doesn't like a nice bowl of pasta? It's getting cold out there. It's just that time of year. This is just really nice, warming, hearty, frugal, and nutritious meal. Right, so that is it from me. Hope you enjoyed this one. Have a good one.